surfnvs.com for your Apex series, lifetime guaranteed surf fins.
Yeah, I've been riding a Stu Kenson Twinser of late with this run of South Swell here. And man, I got the really great Stu's got these two different sets of NVS Twinser fins, the little side bite, the canards. And one set is canted normally at, I don't know, let's say 5 degrees or something like that. And then I've got a set from him that is canted at 11 degrees, which is like really splayed out. And gosh, have I been having a good time on this Twinser with these NVS fins in this board on some really good South Swell left-handers at the beach breaks here in Southern California.
What is the difference between the cant or how does it perform differently in
Well,
the
my
water?
my sense is that the more canted, the looser the board is.
More
So
cant,
I'm
more
getting the
loose.
squirt and the drive of the Twinser with a really responsive turn up at the top with the tail. So that's my sense is that you're getting more a looser feel.
Okay, I'm on their website right now. It says there's a 0 degree cant or there's a 9 degree cant.
Okay, yeah, the 9 degree cant is the one that I have currently. I have both sets.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out there isn't a section that says exactly what the difference between the two is, but they do have a fin guide, which I am pulling up real quickly.
Yeah,
And it
please pull
says,
it up.
okay, it says fin cant is the degree of outward angle a fin has in relation to the bottom of your surfboard. If
Yeah.
the fin has zero cant, it's positioned straight up and down at a right angle from the board. This is going to be fast in a straight line, but it won't give you as much responsiveness through turns. If the cant of your fins is larger, you're going to gain a little more of that responsiveness through the turns, which means it means you can maintain some more drive when your board is tilted on the rail. There you
Okay.
go.
Well, I'm
So,
feeling it. The NVS fins from Stu Kenson, they're
so
great.
you are correct in your assessment. So that, by the way, on it, surfnvs.com, I just clicked fin guide, and then it has of diagrams and also the text that shows you what sweep means, what rake means, what the base to height ratio means, what the toe means. So any of these, and also different constructions, honeycomb versus carbon fiber, what the foil means, flat, inside, 50-50, 80-20. So if you've ever wondered about any of this stuff, but you were too embarrassed to ask, boom, just go there
You
and read
know,
up.
I was out in the water the other day and just randomly, our friend Todd Glazer was out surfing and he and I started talking and we started flipping over boards and looking at fins and stuff and he had a board that Rob Machado had made him and it was a four fin and we just started discussing this thing, the concept of fins and how important they are. And he goes, you know, Kelly travels with a huge box of fins all the time. Kelly Slater, like he's changing out fins. Fins are so it's incredible. It's kind of like a cake with icing, you know? Like you can have vanilla icing, you can have a German chocolate cake icing, you can have strawberry icing, and it completely changes the cake. And fins are like that. Fins are the icing, and they are so crucial to how your board is going to taste.
Well, I was wondering what analogy you were going to try to go with. That is a good analogy. That's better than
Yes.
anyone that I could have thought up.
Thank you.
Um, my C drive fins are cream cheese frosting.
I
Kind of
have,
kind of like it the best.
you know what? I have C Drive cream cheese frosting with sprinkles on top.
I'm a fan of walnuts instead of sprinkles, but I
Oh,
digress. Go to surfnvs.com, Naked Viking on Instagram, and find out why we love them so much. Or just go to realwatersports.com. You can get NVS fins there. You can get 1,500 surfboards in inventory. And then also everything for the beach. Like summer's coming up. You need a Yeti cooler, you need an igloo cooler, you need beach towels, you need whatever else of a hat
umbrella.
with an umbrella, all of it
Yeah.
at Real Water Sports. You can get it all in one place.
You know what else you need? You need a friggin' a little wagon to kind of haul your shit, you know?
Let me tell you the mistake I've made. Um, get the wagon with the fat blow up wheels, because if you get the wagon with the hard plastic wheels, which work great on cement, you try to drag that thing into sand, it's triple the amount of work.
Shit out of luck.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
real water sports. Get it done, man.
Scott, waterwaystravel.com. We know them. We love them. They put us in great waves every year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what Waterways does. They've been doing it forever. They're the experts. You want to deal with experts when you're going on a surf trip, any trip, really. Deal with the experts. And Waterways Travel, they are the experts. They've put me in expert waves in Fiji and El Salvador this year already, and they're going to put me in excellent situation down in Peru here in August. I can't say enough of the good things about the experts in surf travel, Waterways Travel.
We love them so much. And I had to book, or I'm currently recently booked a trip for my family vacation. Such a freaking hassle, dude. Such a hassle. It's like various
Yeah,
hotels, rental car, we got a
yeah,
train from, and it's like,
yeah. I know.
but
I hear
yeah,
you.
it's just a nightmare. So, anyways, don't deal with any of the tediousness of that. Let Waterways handle it for you. And they'll also tell you which boards to bring, what, first aid related stuff to bring, like really, really make our lives simple. So, anywhere you want to go in the world for any level of luxury and any quality of wave for your level of proficiency, go to waterwaystravel.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Hey, yeah, guy. Yeah, guy. You know what? Yeah, Jordy Smith. It feels like a yeah, Jordy Smith type of morning. David, Spit Podcast. We got a lot to talk about here. It is May 29th. And good morning to you, David.
Good morning, Scott Bass. I am apprehensive to say, yeah, Jordy Smith, just because we've celebrated the brew before, and then he hits a slump and my hopes get dashed. It's like, you know, the anticipation
Look at
of
this
that.
tongue.
Scott's tongue is green. Like when my kid eats like a blue sucker and his mouth is all blue, Scott's is AG1 green right now.
Oh, my God.
That's good though.
Look,
Let it saturate in. I think that's
there
the
it is.
easiest way to get it into your bloodstream.
It is. Look, we're going to talk Jordy Smith. I also have a Who Said That. I have some interesting Dirk Ziff news. And of course, a sad passing,
I
a couple of
knew,
sad passings in the
I
surf
knew,
world.
I knew you would be hyped on this Dirk Ziff news. When I first saw the news, I was like, Scott's on this. Scott's like doing a deep dive right now.
I don't know about deep dive, but it's kind of interesting. Where do you want to start? You want me to try to flummox you with a Who Said That?
It won't take much, but yeah, go for it.
Okay, David, who said that? And I quote, by the way, this is this portion of the show where I give a famous surf quote and David tries to attempts to guess which surfer it is. Who said that? And I quote, he is tired of seeing great surfers competing in funky surf on the ASP tour. And it was his vision to put on a contest allowing the best surfers to perform in perfect waves. Who said that, David? Was it one, Rabbit Bartholomew, two, Jack McCoy, three, Luke Egan, or four, Gordon Merchant?
So Rabbit was the guy they would have been talking about, but not the guy who would have stated that quote. I'm gonna go Luke Egan. I know Jack McCoy seems like the obvious choice, but I'm gonna go Luke Egan.
You're wrong, David.
Mm,
You are wrong. It is Jack McCoy. Jack
okay.
McCoy, of course, sadly passed away last week. And so maybe we should just get into that right now. Jack McCoy, rest in peace. If you want, I can do a bit of a read from Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing about Jack, but
Yeah, please do. I actually did not go and read that,
okay.
so I would love to hear it.
Jack McCoy, masterful surf film and video maker from Australia, winner of the Surfer Magazine Video of the Year award in 96 and 99, and widely regarded, David, as the sport's premier cinematographer of the early 90s and 2000s. McCoy was born in Los Angeles, did not know that, the son of a radio and TV show host, and spent his early childhood in Hollywood and moved with his family in 1954 to Hawaii, where he soon began surfing. The preteen Jack McCoy worked in the early 60s hanging movie handbills on telephone poles for touring surf filmmakers. He moved to Australia in 1970, and with the encouragement from surf filmmaker Albie Falzon, began shooting still photographs. McCoy's work was soon featured regularly in Tracks magazine. After McCoy teamed up with Australian photographer Dick Hoole of the famous Hoole McCoy photos, both of them began shooting 16 millimeter film, and Tubular Swells, their well-reviewed first surf movie, was released the following year. Storm Riders in 1982, their follow-up, premiered at the Sydney Opera House. By the way, that's the film that I talked about a few episodes ago with Wayne Lynch and that song "Cool." I think is it "Cool Runnings" or "Cool Breeze" by
Little River Band.
Little River Band. Anyway,
I remember that. Yeah, somebody did send a follow-up note to me that was the film you were talking about.
After splitting with Dick Hoole, McCoy went on to make Kong's Island in 1983, a short film featuring Aussie powerhouse Gary Elkerton. The Performers in 1984, one of the first surf videos. And then a documentary in 1986 of the Quicksilver in memory of Eddie Aikau. However, McCoy was hired in 90 by surfwear giant Billabong to produce the first in a series of marketing videos that would, to a large degree, define Jack McCoy's career. Traveling to exotic locations with Billabong team riders, including Mark Occhilupo, Shane Dorian, Ross Williams, Luke Egan, and Michael Munga Berry, doing much of his best filming from the water and working closely with art director Graham Davey and film editor Kali Sarami, Jack McCoy turned in one beautifully crafted video after another, including Bunyip Dreaming, The Green Iguanas, and Sick Joy. Released into the 90s flood of surf video titles, the huge majority of which were raw, loud, and abrasive, McCoy's work existed on a different artistic plane altogether. He shot in 16 millimeter film rather than video, used world music on the soundtrack instead of punk and metal. He also had a feel for pacing, color matching, visual humor, and peripheral shots. McCoy developed and directed the 1995 Billabong Challenge Surf Contest, held in remote Western Australia and featuring an elite group of 8 surfers, including Kelly Slater, Rob Machado, and Sonny Garcia. McCoy's Billabong Challenge documentary brought him a Surfer Magazine Video of the Year award in '96. And Jack McCoy earned another award 3 years later for Aki, the Occumentary, about 2000 world champion Mark Occhilupo. Other McCoy surf movies, among roughly 24 total, include Sabotage, Blue Horizon, and Free as a Dog. A Deeper Shade of Blue, McCoy's 2021 surf history movie, won Best Documentary Award at the X-Dance Action Sports Film Festival. McCoy also took home a Lifetime Achievement Award at that festival. And McCoy also provided underwater shots for Paul McCartney's 2011 music video, Blue Sway. McCoy sadly died recently here last week at the age of 76 at his home.
Lots of info there I was unaware of. I'm going to go back and watch A Deeper Shade of Blue. I have not seen that. You said 2021 is when that came out?
2012 surf history movie,
2012.
best documentary,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'll check that out. Yeah, what I was going to see as my must-see moment is actually Surfer's Journal, digitized and then published free for everyone on their website. An article that Jamie Brissick wrote about McCoy. It was originally published in 2003, so now 22 years ago, in print, and basically breaks down his filmography, shares captions, shares and captions a portfolio of his still frames. And Brissick basically does a long form account of the prolific filmmaker's life. But I'm going to read just a tiny bit of it because it kind of goes into a little bit more detail from Jamie's perspective. But basically, Jack McCoy grew up on Kailua, or in Kailua, upscale East Shore area of Oahu. When he was 8, his dad pushed him into his first wave at Waikiki, and that's kind of where the obsession began. Over the course of the next couple of years, he would surf, body surf, dive, paddle, outrigger, and fish, all things in the spirit of the waterman. In 1959, at the age of 11, he went to his first surf film, and that was Bruce Brown's Slippery When Wet. Bruce got up on stage and introduced his film, and that planted a very romantic seed in my head, said McCoy. Growing up in Kailua, the wind prevailed onshore, but I can clearly remember this one day I was body surfing and the wind was offshore. And as I was swimming out, a little 3-footer threw over me. And for that split second, I was in the tube. It was like finding a secret place, and I've been in love with that space ever since. Um, Later in the article, he says, every one of my films is a souvenir of my life. It's been a great life of wonderful experiences. If I'm going to do something with my life, then I want to enjoy it. And I can't think of a better way than hanging out at the beach, end quote. So all of that is from the Surfer's Journal article. I will link to it in today's show notes if you want to go read that. But that is my must-see moment presented by Trees Wax.
All right. Very good. I'll definitely check that out. And there's a bunch of stuff on Jack McCoy on Matt Warshaw's Encyclopedia of Surfing, including a pretty good deep dive on the Billabong Challenge, which I mentioned in that read there. And that was a very interesting event, right? It was held at a mystery left, now, of course, revealed as Narraloo in Western Australia. Kelly Slater, Rob Machado, Johnny Boy Gomes,
Yep.
Brendan Margot Margison, Sonny Garcia, Luke Egan, Shane Powell, and Mark Akalupo made up the 8-man starting field. They brought 8 guys to Western Australia. Wind and rain plagued this event, the first day, 10 days of the event. But on day 11, it was clear and beautiful with slightly overhead surf peeling down the reef. But Rabbit Bartholomew, playing the waiting game, waited until the very last day, the final opportunity, and was rewarded with stunning double overhead tubes. And I watched this today. There's video of this everywhere, but I watched some of it on Matt's Encyclopedia of Surfing. And Rob Machado edged the past reigning world champion Kelly Slater. Rob Machado winning quite an incredible field and earning $20,000 for the win. And what's interesting is these guys, as I said, they set up camp in Western Australia in the outback, and they had a massive camp. Like a full on like a mess tent and campfires, and it was a big deal.
Ping pong. I remember that. I watched that video.
That's what I was going to bring up. So I just saw a video of ping pong of Rob Machado playing Johnny Boy Gomes in ping pong, and Johnny Boy just like he looks like angry. Like Johnny Boy doesn't seem like the guy that. It's just an interesting field of guys. Like to be with Johnny Boy Gomes for 14 days in a camp in Western Australia seems pretty gnarly. Not that I know who Johnny Boy is. I've never met him, but it gives a pretty good death stare during his ping pong match.
Well, Rob Machado not only won the event, but schooled everybody in ping pong too.
I'm sure he did. And man, that's not something I think of. When I think of Rob, and I know Rob fairly well, I don't think of him winning the Billabong Challenge, the inaugural one, in perfect Narraloo.
Well, what's funny is I did watch that video a lot. It was kind of right when I was getting into surfing. And I only had a handful of videos, and that was one that I had. I barely remember Rob winning. Like if you would have tested me on that,
yeah,
maybe I would have gotten it. And when you said it, it's like, yeah, that's right. But the film, like with any great contest, it's not about who wins. It's like all that other stuff that was really and everybody was surfing so good, like I do remember Johnny Boy's waves and how different he surfed than everybody else. I don't remember a ton of Kelly, strangely, but yeah, Rob, I certainly remember.
Beating Kelly is kind of, to me, it kind of sticks out because, for whatever reason, we often think of Kelly sort of getting the best of Rob in that pipe event, I think in the same year. Maybe in 95.
Yeah. So Kelly, the thing is that wave is challenging to surf and there's ledges in it and kind of not warbles, but it's not perfect. And so I think the goofy footer maybe has a little bit of an advantage there.
Yeah.
But
anyway, $20,000 for the win too.
Yeah. So by the way, if you haven't watched Green Iguana in some time, Green Iguana is kind of the best, I think, of Jack McCoy's films, in my opinion. I did love Sabotage as well. The documentary is a classic you got to watch, but Green Iguana for me was it. And a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, Kai Neville did a kind of re-release of it was basically footage that had been left on the cutting room floor from Green Iguana. Kai Neville then cut with Jack McCoy's assistance and released that. It's like a 4 or 5 minute video, also worth watching. And you watch that and you're like, this could be modern footage. Like that's how good Aki was surfing back then. So
Pretty cool.
very cool.
In many
Anyways,
ways,
rest in peace, Jack McCoy, man.
yeah, for sure. A lot
Legend.
of these, well, I think Aki does acknowledge, and I think Matt Warshaw does too, that Gordon Merchant was like, look, we're trying to get Aki back from, this bout of depression. Let's get him into fighting weight. Let's get him into some good waves. Let's get him into ease him into competition through through this Billabong Challenge series, and also use Jack McCoy and his brilliance as a filmmaker to market Aki coming back into the surf world limelight. It was a wonderful and very smart use of video and content to kind of move Aki back into the frame.
So I think what was great about that era was long-term investment in the employees. If you think of Merchant as being the owner, founder of Billabong, and then identifying Aki as a unique once in a lifetime talent, McCoy as a unique once in a lifetime talent, and then investing in them for decades. Like we're doing this together as partners, as opposed to, I feel like for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, there's a lot of transient transactions. Just like, oh, we're going to give you a 3-year contract. And if you hit all these goals, then we'll renew it for another year or whatever.
Yeah, the big one is Steph Gilmore. That's the one that sticks out to me. Like when she jumped, I think she went from Rip Curl to Roxy, right? Or was it the other way around?
Well, she's on Rip Curl now. Well,
okay, so yeah, see, I don't even know. And that's the point, right? Like we knew that Aki and Dorian and Luke Egan, those were Billabong guys, and they were for years, for decades, over a decade. And it feels like you say this transient movement, like Griff is a great example. Is he on Billabong or is he on Quicksilver? Who knows? Oh, it's the same company anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So that, and the idea that Tom Curran is going to be sponsored for life and stuff like that is just smart. And it's a no-brainer for the brand in terms of the amount of money that it's costing them.
For whatever reason. I'm enamored by the brand for doing that. Like I'm stoked on Rip Curl for being tight with Curran forever.
Of course. Yeah. And by the way,
I feel like Mason Ho should be that way. Like Mason Ho should be on Rip Curl forever,
because he is this kind of generational defining thing,
Yeah.
So by the way, Stephanie Gilmore is on Rip Curl currently, but you're right. The jump was from Roxy to Rip Curl.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately Quicksilver got in a bind at a certain point, obviously through bankruptcy and that sort of thing, where they just had to shed a bunch of salaries. But it's a short-sighted decision for the new owners. And the point that I was going to make is that Aki was a generational talent, but could not achieve his fullest potential without that level of investment. And somebody like Gordon saying, you know what, you're having a couple of down years. We're not going to eliminate you because of that. Instead, we're going to invest because we see the potential that you have, and we want to help you achieve that potential because it'll benefit all of us. We're all going to win on that transaction. And by the way, Jack McCoy, same thing. Like you're not going to be able to create your best art unless you go to the best waves in the world with the best surfers. And we give you, a budget to use Coldplay in your surf film, which people have opinions about Coldplay, but he did use Coldplay in Blue Horizon, I think Blue Horizon.
That's unfortunate.
It worked. The man didn't make a bad choice. So anyways, that's what was great about that era of the surf quote industry.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, and also I think there would be great if somebody could do a deep dive, and maybe it's been done, and I apologize if I don't know this, but a deep dive on Gordon Merchant and him moving the pieces with Aki. And, was it like, Aki, I've friggin' been in your corner forever. Get off your ass. Let's go. Or was it more like, Aki, I've invested 10 years of my company's marketing dollars in you, and you better get your ass together, get your act together. I don't know, a little bit of both perhaps, but
yeah. Well, my experience with dealing with people is, you do the first conversation first. And if that doesn't work, then you use the second conversation.
Well, of course, things worked out great, and Aki went on to become the 2000 world champion. So it was a win-win for everybody.
Well, like I said last week, my must see moment, watch the
I
current
know.
Aki footage, which I misspoke, I guess, and said Cloudbreak and J Bay. It was Cloudbreak and Bells, not J Bay in
Mm.
that clip. But
I-
sometimes I just misspeak. Anyways, Jack McCoy, rest in peace, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, one of the world, this is interesting. I know, so we'll get right into Dirk as if here. One of the world's finest guitar collections, and I'm reading from an article, was kept under wraps for decades. One of the world's finest guitar collections was kept under wraps for decades. And now, David, it's been donated in full to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The collection has been in the works since 1987 and is now set to be displayed in a permanent gallery that charts the instrument's influence on American culture. The Met has received a landmark donation of historic electric guitars and acoustic guitars, which will be the lifeblood of a new permanent gallery that underscores this instrument's impact. It's 500 of the finest guitars from the golden age of American guitar making between 1920 and 1970 and has been secretly curated over a number of decades. The stories of these vintage guitars, many of which have changed the world with the music they were used to write, are headline worthy unto themselves. The fact that this definitive collection of history soaked instruments was gathered in secret over a huge period is another matter altogether. The collector, David, read Gear Obsessive, is Dirk Ziff, the owner of the WSL, and he's a publishing heir and a financier, and he's also a keen guitarist himself and has recorded and toured with Carly Simon, David. Vintage guitar connoisseur Perry Margolef has been working alongside Ziff as his advisor, and since '87, they've amassed a collection that many would argue rivals Jim Irsay's, the owner of the Colts, who sadly passed away last week, his own star-studded guitar collection. So Dirk Ziff giving this is a wonder. Dirk Ziff has moved way up high in my where I've always thought Dirk was a good guy, and there's like he's not a bad human being. He's trying to do the right thing. And you're looking the look on your face right now.
I have no opinion on that.
Okay, well anyway, Dirk's gifted this guitar curation, this collection that he curated. I think it's wonderful. And Dirk Ziff is my Duke Kahanamoku this week. Good for him. And oh, by the way, do you think that Dirk perhaps is collecting surfboards? He might be.
You sure hope so.
He might be collecting something, and maybe perhaps in the future going to give his gift of surfboard collecting to who knows. But we shall see. But isn't that nice of him to give this wonderful collection to a place where it deserves to be displayed for everyone in the world to unpack the history of these boards through this display at the Met. I'm a big fan of this. More power to you.
I'm a huge fan of it. I'm also always fascinated with what billionaires do with their time and money and what their interests are. Um, I, as a kind of core belief of mine, feel like the arts are the quintessential expression of a culture and they should be invested heavily into. And it's like you don't get the ability to really pursue the art and enjoy the art unless you've sated or satiated your primary needs, which is food, shelter, warmth, that sort of stuff. And so you and I are lucky enough to have been raised in a time in our society where we can kind of dabble in these things and even create these things, and go to museums and appreciate these things. And so it's interesting that those guys are in our same time, but they're at such a level that they can then have their own museum experiences and privately collect this stuff, create better than a museum quality experience in their own homes. I remember hearing 15 years ago, Bill Gates, when he was still married, had his compound in Seattle or outside Seattle, I think his favorite artist was Van Gogh, and his wife's favorite was Monet or something like that. And they owned a collection of Van Goghs and Monets, and they had it situated in such a way that the rooms would sense who was entering the room, and the paintings would swap out. So when he was in the room, it was Monet on the wall or Van Gogh on the walls, and when his wife entered, it would be Monet on the walls. And I was like, wow, that is too much money. But I think ultimately, I've collected various things at various times, or cherished things, let's say, at various times, and you worship it for a little bit and then you grow out of it. And so, what better a way to, or what better thing to do with that collection than put it in the Met where other people can appreciate it and enjoy it? Like, I think that is the ultimate move. So, good on him
I
for collecting
absolutely
it.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also makes sense to collect things in secrecy. Like, if the industry found out that a billionaire is on a collecting spree, they'll double the pricing, you know? So you
Yeah.
do it in private so that you can get stuff at a deal, and then you own the collection, you own the market at that point, but you have billions of dollars and you're earning more every year. There's no need to profit off of that industry. Give it to the museum.
Yeah, I think it's great that he's, these instruments are just, they were vital in the establishment and the proliferation of the music culture, and the fact that he's done this, which I think is a very, I don't know what the word is, David. Is it altruistic? He's just done something that's selfless, I would say. One, guess what? He can go visit the collection anytime he wants.
Yeah.
Two, he's gone, hey, this is more important than me hoarding this in my house and watching them flip out when my wife moves in to the room. Um, you know what I mean? Like you mentioned Bill Gates. So I'm I'm ecstatic about this. I think this is great. And um,
The other,
bravo to Dirk Ziff for doing this. Is a gift to the world.
it's a gift back to the music industry as well, because it, through the collecting and then this level of presentation of it, elevates the art that was created with those guitars.
Yes,
So,
exactly. There's so many levels to this that are smart and kind and wonderful and giving and selfless. So good. I'm so pleased to hear about this.
I mean, look, I don't know which songs were played. Maybe that article has an example of some of the guitars, but if you are included in that collection already, your stock just went up, you know?
I
Um,
want to know what Dirk Ziff recorded with Carly Simon.
yeah, me too. You want
We
to hear
need
him
to.
play?
I'm just looking at like.
So while you're looking that up, I've got a question for you. If you were a billionaire, what would you secretly collect?
Um, I mean, it might be guitars, quite
Yeah,
frankly.
I would have guessed that.
I don't know. The thing that's cool about surfboards and guitars is that there are these things that were crafted. There are these things that everyone saw being used. They made memories, and or in guitars sense, they made music. And so it's different than like collecting stamps. You're like, okay, they just ran off of a printing press and you put it on an envelope. But guitars and surfboards,
You
they
use them.
yeah, they help to they're like the fabric of a culture,
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Well, all right. Well, good job, Dirk. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk Margaret River.
Yes.
Margaret
Let's.
River wrapped up after we finished our last show where we praised the event for running at the box and Big Margaret's. They had 2 more days of competition and didn't end in as stellar a fashion. They had one more really good day at main break and then the finals day. And interestingly, the WSL could have finished the event on that good day, but they opted to call off the event on the second half of the day and wait for tomorrow. And tomorrow ended up being um, much less swell and kind of fewer opportunities for the competitors. So in, the two in the heat with Jordy versus Griffin in the final, Griffin only got one wave. The same thing happened to his brother Crosby in his semifinal heat.
Yeah.
So it wasn't exactly as great of a finish as the event was throughout the event, but still a killer event and I think a killer result.
Yeah. I have here in my notes that it was sort of lackluster except for the result,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
final day. The result was what was great about it, and that is that Jordy Smith is now number one. He's got the yellow jersey going into lowers. And frankly, I think that this next event is going to define Jordy's year. He's been under the radar this year, despite even having already an event win earlier in the season. He's sort of been, in my opinion, probably because he's been on tour for 15 years, for whatever reason. And you and I have talked about him, even as we talk about him, he's sort of been under the radar. This is my sense. But now that is no longer the case. He has become the story. Jordy Smith is the WSL story. And how he handles this coming into Southern California within the spotlight of, I guess, the surf industry, if there is such a thing anymore, it's going to be very interesting to watch how he handles himself here, how much press he does, how he, where he surfs leading up to, like, I feel like I want to see him kind of conquer the headspace that's going to be required to go into lowers and come out of there with a quarterfinal at minimum.
So Jordy's the only reason he is uh in the shadows, I think is what you said, this season is because we are so apprehensive to jump on the bandwagon because he's burned us so many times before. And so we're just kind of like moderating our enthusiasm. But I'm gonna jump right into the fire here and do it. Um, I think that his headspace is strong. Like that has been the culprit in the past, but I hear him talk now. There's something just about his aura that I feel is just comfortable. And look, he's won lowers in the past. I think maybe multiple times even. So I feel very good about him out there. He looks lighter and fitter than he's ever looked. The boards look better. He seems to just be in a better place. So I can't imagine him being rattled at lowers. I predict that he just goes out there and does his thing, which is good enough to make the quarters and the semifinals. And then if he really peaks at the right time and maybe draws somebody who's not peaking at the right time, he can easily win it over anybody on tour. So to back up this, the stats are this is the first season that he's ever won two events in a season. He's sitting in first for the first time that I can remember ever. I know he's finished in second place in the past, like a decade and a half ago, but I don't even remember him being in first place that season. He won the Aussie Treble, which is the trifecta event in Australia. So I'm feeling good about it, and I'm feeling good about him at lowers.
Yeah, I am too. It's so funny. I mean, I even feel the pressure. Like I'm just a fan watching. We're all rooting for Jordy, and there just seems to be this. All of a sudden, there's this like angst, And you mentioned why, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. I would like to see Ethan Ewing and Jack Robinson do well and move up the ratings here and get into the final five. Um,
Well,
there's a couple
so
guys in the final five. If it was to be held, well, there's one in particular that if it's 8 foot at Cloudbreak, there's just certain guys that I want in the
yeah,
final five, and there's
yeah.
yeah.
For the record, so the next event is lowers. The following event after that is Rio, which Jordy has won in the past as well. Then you go J Bay, which is a favorite of Jordy's. And then you go Chopu, which he's semifinaled at in the past, but traditionally lefts are not his bread and butter. But those next three events up until Chopu are his kind of favored, preferred events. So I'm feeling good for a Jordy entering the final five in first.
All right. Well, we'll see. It's going to be exciting. On the women's side of the event, Gabriela Bryan is seems rather unstoppable, quite frankly, and she's kind of a surprise
Gabby
relative
emerged.
to the Caitlin and
None,
Aaron
none of
Brooks.
us, none of us had our money on Gabriela Bryan going into this season, and she has emerged as a dominant force,
Yeah.
and not just by winning two events now. Um, Now that I think about it, same two events Jordy won. She won El Salvador, and then
Let me see here.
Actually, did she win this event? No, I'm.
Yeah, she did. She did win this
Yeah, she
event,
did
and
win this event.
it is
Yeah.
the same event that Jordy
Yeah.
won.
So, but what's interesting is she doubled down on what she did in El Salvador. In El Salvador, I told you on this show, Carissa Moore to me used to be like the power surfer on the women's side, like the rail game was above everybody else. She's surfing better than Carissa was at Carissa's peak. Like it's a new level of rail game that we haven't seen on the women's tour before. And she did it again at Margaret River. And so there's been moments where we've had women come through the ranks who had like this specialized thing that they were good at, but couldn't necessarily maintain consistency throughout the year. She's now doing both things. She's dominant at one thing, which is rail game and power, and then also consistent. And so to Caitlin, this is a threat for Caitlin Simmers because I saw Caitlin Simmers as kind of steamrolling the season.
Yeah.
And Caitlin's got maybe a more diverse set of tricks than Gabby, but when it comes to power, I feel like Gabby's got him is the dominant force.
Well, they're pretty close as far as points, not in power, but they're pretty close here as I look. It's actually a really good. It's a rivalry that I don't know if it's a rivalry yet, but it's one that I mean, when you look at their results, they almost have the same exact results.
Yeah.
Except for a win and a second place is the difference. And it'll be interesting. I've got Caitlin Simmers as in my fantasy league as winning the event. But I think Carolyn Marks is going to move up she's our world champion. She's had a lackluster four events in a row. I could see Carolyn Marks, who always does well at lowers, making a move into the final five here after the lowers event.
I could. What's exciting about this season is how things have shaken up so much. There's been a lot of movement on both sides of the men and the women. So that does make things a bit more exciting.
Yeah.
The wave or the maneuver of the event at this Margaret River Pro was Griffin Colapinto's unanimous 10-point ride across the board. He took off on a mid-sized wave under priority and check speed turn and then hit the end section with full speed and projection upward and outward and just did a full rotation, greased the landing, got a 10-point ride. And it was incredible. It was an incredible move, incredible to watch, but Stab High had just taken place over the course of the weekend. And I was watching a lot of those clips on my phone as they were happening. And it was really killer to watch the technicality of the airs and all that sort of thing. But one thing that I've talked about to you about wave pools is the sections aren't big enough. Like they're cool to watch and it's cool to watch Stab High and see people refine the technical side. But the biggest airs are always going to be done in the ocean. When you see Matt Miola throwing everything at a double overhead closeout, that just projects him farther and higher and gives him opportunities to do more things than a wave pool can until the wave pool can create that level of a section. But I don't know that it ever will be able to compete with the ocean, of course. That's what I felt like happened in that moment. Like Stab High was incredible, did great things. I loved watching it. And then within 24 hours, you watch Griffin Colapinto stomp on all of it with one maneuver. You know what I mean? It's kind of an interesting moment.
It was. That's a great sort of framework to look at it. I actually was thinking, I immediately thought of Felipe at J-Bay. I was like, okay, well, because what we saw Felipe do at J-Bay whatever it was, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
Way longer than that.
Was it a long time? Anyway, he was, as you know, he was doing big airs, on 5-foot waves and landing with transition and continuing on and then doing another one on the same wave. And we all kind of thought, okay, that's pretty much the air game with the jersey on. That's sort of the benchmark, the high watermark to meet. And it feels like with just one aerial, Griffin at least met that mark and maybe surpassed it because of the amount of you had to land in the flats on that section or you're going to get blown up by where those two sections come together. So I don't know what your thoughts are, what Griffin did relates to what Felipe did at J-Bay 6 or 8 years ago.
So 8 years ago, it was, I just looked it up, 2017. And also a follow-up, that Little River Band song is Cool Change.
Oh,
That was open in my Google search right before I looked up the year of Felipe's wave. Anyways, I agree with you. J-Bay was not an airwave until that moment. And Margaret River, definitely not an airwave until this moment. And so you have these iconic waves with a traditional style of surfing, and then somebody comes out and innovates on it and then opens up, what is possible. Um, Interestingly, Margaret River wasn't even a right until a decade ago. Everybody was going left. And then guys started going right because it was a little bit punchier and the modern surfing allowed to surf it. And then I feel like John had a moment where he redefined it on rail.
I feel like Kelly I almost feel like I remember watching the competition where all of a sudden Kelly's just going right, and everyone and the commentators are like, yeah, it makes sense. The right's actually better for, Kelly seems, I don't know. That's just my recollection. It's probably wrong.
Makes sense though.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I remember Tommy Whitaker getting a 10 on a right at Chopu.
That's random.
Super random. And Kelly getting a crazy score. It might have been a 10 on a left at Sunset. Do you remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I do remember that. He was in a heat. I want to say he was in a heat against Andy, and he came out right in front of Andy or something. Maybe my memory's fading on me here, but I do remember the left at Sunset that he got, and it was a pretty sick tube.
Yeah. And Tommy Witz, it was a right at Chopu that was just like so like you wouldn't even look
West,
right.
just a
Yeah, but
West bowl.
even if I'm sitting out there, I would never look that way. You're just not oriented that way. And he
Yeah,
saw the opportunity, went for it, and got blown out like almost on dry reef, and then
yeah,
skirted back out. And it was like, oh my gosh.
crazy.
Anyways, Margaret River now is in a new era thanks to Griffin Colapinto.
You know what's interesting is that Kelly could go as a wild card at the lowers event, could could pull Jordy in the first round.
Yeah,
That would be weird.
yeah. Uh, you know who I think would have been? I got this note from somebody on Instagram, and we should start a
Hold
petition.
hold that thought, and
Okay,
I'll
I'll
come
tease
right
it.
back.
Come back for the petition note.
Okay, welcome back, the Spit Podcast. Tell me about the petition. The
Uh,
petition.
so Bobby Martinez to surf lowers would be the petition as a wild card because
Oh,
Channel Islands just dropped an edit of him riding his Bobby quad on, up around his home, but on waves that are similar to lowers. And he's he's right there on par with anybody on the CT.
first of all, is that something that he even wants to do?
Probably
Because
not.
I mean, there'd be a lot of people would be showing up with tennis rackets, like I'd probably show up in like Wimbledon all white gear with my tennis racket, like a
I mean, it'd be
Bjorn Borg, like headband, like sweatband.
so imagine. I can't imagine something that would draw more attention to the event.
It would be pretty awesome. But I mean, just
He's
what Bobby did, it would just, there's no way. I mean, I don't know that even if the WSL allowed it, I don't think Bobby would do it because he kind of dropped the mic and walked off the stage. You can't pick up the mic again.
I agree, but it'd be incredible, and he is still a threat.
So Channel Islands is teasing that somewhere on Instagram or
No, Channel Islands just dropped an edit of him surfing
oh,
his
I
Bobby
see.
quad, and you
I
look
see.
at it and you go, "This fits with lowers and with anybody on tour right now."
Oh, so this is your petition that you just made up.
This is a listener submission petition, but I'm getting
Oh,
behind it because how do you
okay.
make this happen? And the reality is, under Ryan Crosby's, CEO of the WSL, I think he embraces surfer kind of what do the surfers want, and this is
Yeah.
what the surfers want.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I'm
Interesting.
for it. Let's officially reveal the cut for this year because obviously it just finished and took place.
Yeah.
Alejo Muniz barely made it in 22nd position. And what's interesting about that is he's been repping the Argentine flag on his shoulder. I don't know if you noticed that. So we think of him as being Brazilian. Apparently, he was born in Argentina. And so this could all be a play for the Olympics for Alejo
Yeah.
Muniz more than it
Yeah.
is for a world title spot. So um, that positions him as the highest Argentine on tour. Right below the cut line, Matt
Is he the
McGillivray.
only Argentine on tour?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
is. Exactly. Matt McGillivray didn't make the cut. Liam O'Brien, Jackson Bunch, George Pitar, Ian Gavea, Sammy Pupo, Imai Kalani DeVault, David Silva, Ian Gentile, Ramsey Bukayam, Edgard Grogia, Ryan Callanan, who was out with injury and new birth of his child. And then, of course, Gabriel Medina took the season off.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess the first two are sort of surprising. Matthew and Liam, you'd think that they probably could have made it. They both have, have tons of experience. I don't know. There's not too much that's too surprising here.
There's a
As
couple that
far
I
as,
would like to see requalify, you know,
yeah.
George
Yeah.
Pitar, Jackson Bunch had some highlight moments. So we can hope for those, but
Yeah.
whatever. We'll see. There's always new people up and coming that are equally exciting.
Yeah.
Um, before we go and before we go to Patreon for the bonus show, I want to address this Pavones situation. Have you been tracking it?
No, what's going on there? Don't know
Um,
anything about it.
luxury developers are illegally tearing down and seizing property to develop and privatize the point at Pavones is the short story.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's been a bunch of information and probably misinformation on the internet in the last few days, but Holly Beck, who owns property there and I've had on Surf Splendor and maintained a little communication with, messaged me and she's like, "Hey, Surfer Mag did a great job writing this up. If you want actual like information on it and
Yeah.
not rather than trying to sift through a bunch of different Instagram posts and figure out what's what."
Yeah.
So I'm going to read to you from the Surfer Magazine's. Um, I'll give the author credit in a second when I look up his name, but basically,
Chris
right.
Dodds.
Thank you, Chris Dodds. That's right. Riot police showed up at Pavones at 4 a.m. to accompany demolition crews as they began to destroy two supermarkets, a bakery, one restaurant, and multiple homes to make way for development. Pains me to write this, but Pavones is currently being demolished against the will of the locals to make way for a mega development that will not only erase the fabric of the community, but also destroy one of the greatest waves in the world. Police arrived at local businesses in central Pavones at 4 a.m. This morning with body armor, rifles, and gas masks to protect the demolition crews from the local residents who had to rally to simply empty the buildings of the food and goods that were still inside. The local municipal government of Golfito is defending those demolishing the town rather than the citizens who they were elected to serve. It's sad and it's illegal. Currently, there are many suspicions as to who is behind these actions. To the extent of our knowledge, there is no clear answer. Many locals are furious with the mayor of Golfito, who oversees the small communities around Golfo Dulce, for ordering this demolition. Others are questioning the actions of the hotel group that has been developing a large marina project to accommodate super yachts about a mile from Pavones. These actions are being done without due process and in flagrant disrespect of human rights, not to mention a lack of consideration for the sensitivity of the sand bottom waves such as Pavones that deepens on the natural sediment flow that enable it to be the second longest left in the world, and not just one long closeout. These projects include, but are not limited to, A, the demolition of existing buildings under the guise of, quote, reclaiming public lands to expand the road and allow for further development, illegal. B, expansion of Pavones Point to 60 luxury condos, greedy. Privatization of the point, illegal. And D, demolish the entire town to rebuild and rebrand as a, quote, sustainable luxury destination, also illegal. So this is all the community is all in unison, and they're basically, the opinion is this is these are privately owned properties. This is a beautiful resource and wave that we have cultivated and celebrated and enjoyed and now popularized. And now that it's popularized, you have somebody building a marina for super yachts a mile away who has luxury development, who is now coming in and not buying up property. They're seizing the property, demolishing the property, and they also have protection from the local police force so that we can't do anything about it. They're stealing our homes and our land. That's what's happening.
Wow, this looks horrible, man. The gentrification of Pavones by illegally seizing land that's not theirs doesn't seem like this doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem, how does this happen? Like,
Happens all the
wow.
time, and it happens traditionally through force. It happens in the modern times
I
through
mean, I could see it happening
legal
in
exercise.
Nicaragua. I can see it happening in, you know, but Costa Rica is pretty westernized for Central America. Uh,
Look, the it usually nowadays in modern societies or developed countries happens through legal exercise, through enough money, funding flowing the right way for them to have it happen legally. This seems to be that they've put the force before the legal exercise. However, the community, Save Pavones, Protect Our Community, the Pavones Town Committee set up a GoFundMe. They have $30,000 contributed to it already. And the purpose of it is to fund the legal battles, community advocacy, and environmental studies to stop the privatization of Pavones. So if you are interested in supporting them, you can contribute to that cause and they can go about defending themselves legally.
I'm just reading some of the stuff here. It's quite a bit to read, but yeah. Um, well, we're going to keep our eyes on this, David. We'll see how this progresses. Hopefully there's something that can be done to at least stall this until everybody gets a chance to be heard.
Congratulations on the community for doing such a great job acting immediately. Huge sympathies for what they're going through. Surfline actually did a great Instagram post interviewing the people who were trying to clear out the supermarket before it was completely demolished of like the goods that were in there. And they
Yeah.
were just completely distraught and just saying, look, like it's crazy what greed will do. I never thought that they would come in and tear down our homes and our supermarkets,
Yeah.
unjustly. This is insane. So like I said, Surfline has that on their Instagram and it seems really, really straight to the point. So,
All right.
um,
Well, look, anything else on that?
yeah, well, not on that, but I do want to remind listeners, go get us on Patreon. We're doing bonus shows every week. It's Patreon Spit Pod, and I've linked to it from my Instagram account at Surf Splendor, and then also surfsplendorpodcast.com. You can link over. We've got bonus shows every week, and then also this week we're going to discuss a little bit of Stab High and also how the Pope saved surfing.
Heck yeah. Patreon
That's
listeners, stand by. You're going to get the extras.
not
Until
hyperbole.
until next time, adios and aloha, unless you're Patreon.